Good evening and hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the Untold, the show where we have amazing people talking about all of their extraordinary journeys. But of course, first, I'm your host, Abdullah Hindiani.
And I'm your host, Ajin Al-Athari, and today we're joined by Dr. Laila Kazem, who's both a photographer and a doctor.
She is, and honestly, when we looked at her social media's account, I'd imagine our producers were like, okay, let's stop talking about her being a doctor for a second because her work as a photographer is amazing. So, out of curiosity, we're going to be talking to her all about photography, right? How did she chose this kind of path alongside her in the medical field?
Especially because studying medicine, being a doctor, it's very time consuming, very difficult. So to be able to kind of balance both pursuits is not an easy feat. So I'm curious to see how she did it.
I'm curious as well. With that being said, let's take a break so we come back and sit down and talk to her. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. But most importantly, thank you, Dr. Laila Kazem, for being our guest today on The Untold.
Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you. And I'm amazed that you got to pursue careers both as a doctor and a photographer. But first, I wanted to ask you, congratulations on being a doctor. I heard you graduated quite recently. And I also wanted to ask you, what was it like starting med school? What was your first day like? What was the experience?
Thank you so much. I'm also excited that I graduated after 7 years.
MashaAllah.
And thank you. And really excited to finally get to practice. So I think I remember like my first day, I was definitely more excited because I'm naturally like the curious type of person. And I was really excited to learn everything that has to do with medicine and the human body. I think I was mostly nervous about making friends rather than the curriculum.
Now, also 7 years, that's a large chunk of years, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're entering college years at such a young age, it takes a lot of time. So how do you say all those years, all those studying have shaped you as a person?
So definitely, yeah, 7 years are a long time. And I feel like I was many different versions of myself over those years. So I think every phase during those years was a phase where I learned new things and also realized maybe some things that I need to change. I definitely became more disciplined as I grew up, and also because we go through so many different specialties and we meet so many different people of different classes. I think that I also gained like a bigger perspective on the world. And definitely, I can't say it was all positive. There were also a lot of stressful times. So that was something that we had to learn how to deal with and overcome.
Well, I'm not surprised. It does sound like studying this would have been very overwhelming for anybody. It's quite a difficult career path to choose, but very rewarding when you actually get through with it all.
Definitely,
And the
definitely.
fact that you're such a curious person, I think that's a really great way to look at things in life, and it allows you to want to learn and enrich yourself. And actually, I want to ask you as well, because you mentioned also that you're interested in photography and you are a photographer. So have you always wanted to be a photographer, or does it come later in life?
I don't think I wanted to be a photographer. It just happened naturally. I always loved taking photos and making videos. I remember I got my first camera when I was in the 3rd grade. And actually, my parents, I only have one sister, so my parents wanted to buy my sister a present, which was the camera, but they didn't want to divide us. So they got us both cameras. And so ever since the 3rd grade, I've been taking photos and videos, and it just became like a daily part of my life. I even I even started asking my teachers if I can, for example, when we had a project, I would ask them if I can make a video instead of a poster. So definitely, I've been using the camera ever since I was young, and I think my abilities now are like an accumulation of everyday practice to eventually becoming better and better until I can now. I only recently started calling myself a photographer, even though I've been doing this for more than 10 years.
Oh, mashallah.
Yeah.
Now, also, photography is one of the most unique kind of artistic, I would say, ways in which you're capturing a slice of life that's in the moment, right? You're capturing literally memory as opposed to any form of other medias. So what would you say is the reason that made you, pick photography and then stick with it? Like, was it a form of expression, the way you tell stories with the picture? Like, what was it about photography in itself? You were like, okay, I kind of find myself here.
That's a really good question because growing up, I also like to paint and draw and take photos. So that's That's a great question. I also wonder why I kind of went with photography the most. Maybe because I felt like it's not only documenting something, but documenting something through your own lens. So you can almost capture your own personal experience through a video or photo. And I've had that said to me a lot of times. Like they would say, I can't believe I've been to that place so many times and I never saw it in that way. So I guess that's what I love about it, is that you can almost uh, you can document your experience through the lens, like of your own, you know.
No, that makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
because it is a way of capturing the moment, finding different angles. And you know, a lot of people can take photos, but it's different just taking photos and being a photographer, I feel. Like me, myself, I love taking photos. I've been taking them for years. I love looking at photos of nature and flowers and stuff like that and capturing the beauty in the everyday life. But I wouldn't call myself a photographer, you know? So what made you change from just feeling like this is your hobby to becoming more your passion and something that kind of defines you?
Well, definitely, I think the more and more I practiced photography and videography, the more I felt confident in it. And like I mentioned, I guess you not only have to have like a creative point of view, but also you need to accumulate like technical skills. So, for example, we were mentioning how I feel like you can kind of get like your message or your perspective across. And so during medical school, I used to participate as like a media lead for a lot of different campaigns and make like video coverages and like ads. And so I feel like I was able to gain skills. And like I mentioned, I realized that a lot of times they would specifically ask, for example, for a video instead of like a post, because they know that in order to get your message across, a video can be the most effective like form of media. And so anyways, I think just over time while working as a videographer and a photographer for my student association and through my life, I just felt more confident saying that I am a photographer.
And you know, by saying you're a photographer, do you have a defined style, photographic style, or like how do you define your own, you know, style when it comes to taking photos?
I would say my style is like emotion evoking and nostalgic,
Okay.
mainly. Yeah. And also, I'm a very sentimental person, so I tend to kind of attach to memories and places, and that definitely shows through my photography.
I mean, that's really cool. Even the fact that you did all of this when you were in uni and from a young age, and even being able to just do videos and stuff, like you said, the technical skills go a long way because it really changes the way you look at things and how you're perceived, as well as how you perceive yourself. And I wanted to ask you, did anything ever influence you? Did you ever draw inspiration from any things or people in your photography style?
I think it was mainly just things around me, whatever I'm exposed to, the places I travel to, the media that I consume. Like I said, I was a very curious person. I still am. So I read a lot and I watched a lot of documentaries and just like I was exposed to a lot of different media. So I think it's just experiencing life is what inspires me.
It is. And you know, speaking of inspiration, because you also said that your style is about emotions and,
Yeah.
you know, the sentimental value of those photographies. So when you see, you know, things, moments, people, how do you decide, you know, how do you choose, oh, this is a right moment for me to take a photo, and then another one's not a right one? Like what defines the lens through your eyes?
I think the most important thing to me is the moment has to be interesting. So there has to be like an interplay of things. For example, there is something moving, or there is somewhat like a person against a background. There has to be something interesting. So I usually don't go for just like a static building. If there is a building, I would want a subject to be moving in front of it. That's one thing, for it to be interesting enough to capture. And then the second thing is light. Light is very important to me. I love natural light, and I also think city lights add a nice touch. So I definitely go for something that is interesting to the viewer and that has a good lighting to capture.
I feel like lighting is really important in general, especially when you're taking photos. So is it always these kind of movements and light that makes you focus on taking these kind of photos? That's what draws everything to you?
I think mainly just something that I see as beautiful. And I've had people say, many times, what are you taking a photo of? Like, what is there to see? But I think to me, like the small moments of life and how the environment is playing into the scene, that's what I look for.
And I bet they're always surprised when they see the photo afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's what you saw. They must be like, wow, so that's what you saw when we saw
Exactly.
nothing that was that different.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
And also, have you taken any photography classes, or did you just find your style, through trial and error? Like, because I know there are some rules when it comes to photography and composition, like, I think that called golden ratio and stuff,
Yeah.
the 3x3 blocks, squares. So have you studied, or is it something depending on your natural, moments and experiences?
I don't recall like a single class that I took. I haven't taken a lot of classes, but one place that I felt helped me grow a lot was actually it was a scientific like summer program in KTV, if you know that, the Scientific Institute for Research. And in that scientific program, there was like a photography club, and the head of the photography club was actually also a medical student. At the time, I was just a high school student, and when I joined that club, I think I learned a lot about cinematography more than photography. I learned like the basis of making an interesting video, color grading, editing, and so that one experience stands out a lot to me as something I learned a lot from. Other than that, it's just like searching about these things here and there. Definitely the golden ratio, the rule of threes, all these things I've just learned over the years. And
I mean, it's really cool that you're able to perceive so many different things in different aspects. And even though you're not formally trained so much, you taught yourself. But especially in terms of, like, for instance, I can't take videos or do anything with them. Like, photos are much easier because they're static. You kind of take a photo, even if you choose to learn how to edit them and everything. I feel like it's sometimes more easier than a moving image in terms of videos. So would you say that cinematography really helped change how you take photos?
I wouldn't say it changed how I took photos. I just think it allows me to have a wider range of skills.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
It does. And speaking of these wide range of skills, what would you say are some integral skills that you need to have in order to get a good photo, like, broad terms?
I think first of all, you need to have a good eye to decide what you're going to take a photo of. And then something that I like, I know there are like main things like lighting, but I actually want to touch upon a really important element that people don't realize, but it's actually editing after the photo. That's one of the most important things, because there might be a place that initially when you take the photo, it's not post-worthy and it's not like, gallery-worthy, but with the right edits, it can be. So I think the editing that comes after the photo is really important. And I don't mean changing the entire scene or photoshopping. I just mean knowing what colors the image needs to make the scene pop.
And do you think that difference is what differentiates a regular photo from a more professional photo?
100%, 100%. I think editing is half of photography and cinematography.
That does make a lot of sense. And we are going to go on a very quick break, and I hope we can talk about this some more because it's really fascinating seeing the world through your lens, you could say.
Inshallah.
So stay tuned for after the break.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, with Dr. Laila Kazem. I do want to ask you, about something very particular, because if you go on your social, there's a lot of photos that are here in Kuwait. And what a lot of people don't realize is, if you look at those photos, it's familiar places, but they are in different lenses, right? They feel different. So how has documenting, these kind of photos, these kind of moments in Kuwait changed your perspective about the place that's so familiar to all of us?
Definitely, I think it makes me feel even more nostalgic than I already naturally feel. What's funny is that I would look back at a lot of photos taken during summer, and I would think, wow, Kuwait is so beautiful. But in the moment when I was taking the photo, I was dying from the heat, like genuinely dying, but I still managed to get like a nice photo. And I think it just, that means it adds like a positive outlook to Kuwait and all the places I love.
I think that's a really wonderful sentiment. And I don't blame you for feeling dying from the heat, because our summers are no joke, as we all know. I find that for myself, I sometimes take, I think, the beauty that we have for granted. But when I travel is when I want to take a million photos. I come back and my phone is filled with so many photos. I don't even end up posting or using them all. I just have taken so many. So do you have that yourself when you travel? Do you find that when you travel, it's easier to take more photos? Or how do you know, like, when is the time to take a photo, what's worth photographing, and when to live in the moment? 'Cause I feel like that balance is hard to strike, especially when you're traveling.
That's true, definitely. For me, travel is my number one opportunity for photography, especially because when I travel, that means I don't have to study and I don't have to work.
True.
So I have more free time. But not just that, because traveling means you get to experience new cultures that I want to document, you know? I think the balance is important. And what I generally do is like take photos and then edit and post afterwards. Because if I do both during the trip, I feel like I will miss out on enjoying my time. But for me, capturing the moment is just as important as experiencing it, because it's something I love to do. So even though it takes up some of the moment, I still think that I can do both. You know, I can live it and also capture it really quickly.
Yeah, you know, sometimes I get confused because sometimes you see these people who are like, why are you taking a photo while traveling instead of experiencing the moment? And I'm like, you know, it literally takes 1 minute to take a photo. Then you have 24 hours.
Exactly.
to
And
enjoy
my
your
memory is
travels.
so bad. So if I don't take the photo, I'll just forget it.
Yeah, and also you can't print a memory, right? But you can print a photo.
True.
That's why, you know, I always tell people whenever you're traveling, even if it's not in a professional capacity, take photos, right? Because if you don't take photos, you're going to be one of those people who's like, oh, it's in my memory. You're going to go back home and then, you know, where's your proof? You know, where's your proof you went to this lake? I do want to ask you about something because you mentioned the editing process several times, even in your traveling. What is it about your editing process in particular that takes a photo from, like I said, it's a, you know, regular photo, general photo, to something exceptional, worthy of posting?
I think how it applies to photography is mainly like when I mentioned how my style is like nostalgic and emotion evoking. So sometimes I would take a photo when it's noon. So noon means it's very sharp and very like strong lighting, and I want something more soft. So I can add, you know, those emotions through the editing, like making something a little bit softer, adding more warmth to the photo. And that really helps people feel, you know, the emotion. Like when something is more warm, you will feel like the warmth is coming through the screen. So that's for photos. And then for videos, well, that's a whole nother world, because a lot of times I have, for example, a certain like soundtrack I want to put my videos on. So that just takes a lot of time, you know, and it's not really a good idea to do it then and there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I do want to ask you though, because when you travel, you know, the weather isn't always predictable. Even though you'll check everything, you'll try to be on time, but like sometimes it's going to rain, sometimes it's too sunny, it's windy. You can't always control what's happening when you travel with the weather. Does that ever affect your photos?
100%. Well, the first issue is not all cameras are weatherproof.
Very
So
true.
that's one thing. But you know what I will say is the iPhone is very weatherproof. And that's why I'm a big advocate and supporter of, you know, using what you have, including your phone, to take photos, especially during travel, because they're so lightweight. And since you mentioned that, I remember like a specific memory I have of a situation. I was in Hong Kong and we were climbing up the mountain specifically to see like a statue that was at the top of the mountain. And when we arrived, it was so foggy that we could not see any part of that statue.
Oh, that's so
And
annoying.
I know. And honestly, I was so upset. I was in grade 12 at that time, so maybe I was less like in control of my emotions. So I remember like just being so upset the whole time, but of course I still took photos. And when I looked back on those photos, I thought like the fog had given such a beautiful effect to the trees and to the surroundings. So I ended up getting really good photos actually. And that's when I realized that thanks to photography, I was able to reframe that experience and just realize that even with bad weather conditions, you can still make something good out of it.
Yeah. I love how you took that opportunity to come up with a very positive product out of it, because I remember, and my sister still hates me to this day for this, we were in Canada for the Niagara Falls, and then she made the mistake of asking me to take the photos of me and my mom and her. And to this day, the photos are all blurry. There's nothing that survived out of those photos. And she's always like, oh, it's your fault, your fault. you know, in a joking manner. So I'm glad that you were able to take the extreme weather and circumstance and turn it into, you know, a beautiful product, because that just shows your talent.
Definitely.
I do want to ask about something, because you mentioned the smartphones. Now, with the way that smartphones evolved, you know, with the influx of AI technologies and technology in general, have you found photography to be adaptable to these kind of changes in technology, or are you still, you know, old-fashioned camera, lenses, you know, lighting, everything?
I think I go both ways. For example, I love using the film camera. My first film camera was actually a gift from my uncle, and he used it like 20, 30 years ago. I'm not really sure, but many years ago. So I love old school, but I also use the new, new generation cameras and phones. And to me, I feel like the emergence of smartphones and like really lightweight photography tools is an advantage, because it makes that hobby and that art more accessible to all people. And that's what's important, you know, like I feel like the beauty of photography is documenting different experiences. And so it's important to have people from different abilities and classes be able to document that. So I think it's definitely a good thing, not a bad thing.
I mean, that's a great way of looking at it, especially in terms of accessibility. I do want to ask you, though, what are your thoughts on AI and the evolution of photography? Because there's a lot of AI photos and generated images these days. And me and Abdullah kind of have a pro-con vibe when it comes to AI things. So what are your thoughts as a photographer?
Okay, so my outlook is not that positive on AI, honestly. And now I want to know who's with AI, because I really want to.
Well, all the staff members here.
And
Oh
Abdullah,
my
I'm
God.
kind of iffy about it,
Iffy,
to be
right?
honest. Like, I feel like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, to me, AI is positive, but is positive in some areas. But I think that AI generated images, I think can take away from photography as a field, especially because to the untrained eye, they can seem real. So not everyone is able to differentiate between AI and real photography. And the other thing is like the beauty of taking photos and making videos is in the process, you know, and in the the reality of it, that you're documenting something real. So to me, AI generated images are kind of blunting creativity.
Yeah.
Finally, I got one on the team.
Yeah.
No, and I think I'm with you on that, you know, on the same kind of issues, because I think it also goes into the moral side of things, where AI has been proven, especially the generated, you know, images, has been proven that it's been stealing from artists
Exactly.
and then
So it's
changing
also
it.
an ethical like issue, not
It is.
just And that kind of interplays into medicine, because now like the students have been using AI to kind of ask questions, and it also poses like an ethical issue of, let's say I have a patient and I'm putting information into it, like is that information going to be taken? Like am I violating the privacy of someone? But I will say one thing is that when I was younger, it was my dream to be able to tell a robot, please make a video of this scene, and it creates it genuinely. Because when I was making videos for my project, you know, they would be like projects about like a forest scenery or like a historical war, and like my dream was I can just tell them to create that imagery. So I mean, the generation is lucky to be able to have that, but at the same time, if I wasn't like working towards that, I wouldn't have gained the skills I have, you know? So that's why I feel like it blunts talent and creativity, because you're not gaining the skills required to reach that level. You just get it instantly.
It's a very double-edged sword.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I do remember Sam Altman, who's, you know, created ChatGPT, saying, even if it says it has 90%, you know, success rate in medical, you know, succession, whatever it's called, AI is not the one to go for, you know,
100%.
medical advice, because medical advice, you require knowing the family history, knowing their personal history. You have to know so many things to make an analysis, which is completely going off topic here.
Yeah.
So let's go back to using AI in terms of enhancing the image. You know, is there, like in your opinion, is there a form of cheating there? Because I know some, you know, photographers who take a photo, and then, for example, the way a finger is, you know, looking, the way a tree branch is looking is not really right, and to recreate the image is not really realistic. Now they can use AI to remove that. Is that considered cheating for you, or is that, you know, within the tools of using it?
No, I think in that case, it's definitely within the tool.
Yeah.
AI enhanced like erasing tools, I think are useful. And that's where I support AI to like make our lives easier, but without generating an entire idea and, you know,
Without stealing from others.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I use that actually because Lightroom and other like photography apps have that like encrypted in it. So for example, I use the erase tool just to quicken the
And
procedure.
that's my entire point, is that if it's not being used for something unethical or immoral, like taking people's work and making it, but using it as a tool, it's completely fine.
I agree.
No, I can see the point with all of that. Like there is a line that you shouldn't cross, and being able to use it in a more ethical way as a tool to help, but not kind of take over the whole creative process itself. In general, technology is going to progress. Everything is advanced. Things are not how they were 50 years ago when it comes to photography and things like that. Everyone kind of fought the advancement in some way, but to be able to have, I guess, regulations and using it in the right way makes a big difference, I think.
Totally agree.
And, you know, before we wrap up, I do want to ask you, because your schedule must be really hectic between being a doctor and photography. So how do you balance that?
I think I would be lying if I say I balance that. It definitely is like difficult, but I think the key is realizing that you're gonna have phases. So in a certain phase, you're able to focus more you need to focus more on your studies or your work. And then other times you're going to have more free time to practice what you love and the hobbies that you like to do. The other thing is, thankfully, and I think that's why I stuck with it the most between my other hobbies, photography is something you can do in your daily life. So even going to work and back, just like the small things that I do in every day, I can take photos, you know. So I think that's how I balance these two things, is that I do both, you know, at the same time.
Well, I love that you get to do both. And I want to thank you for joining us for this really amazing conversation. It was really great to see your point of view on
Thank you
things.
for having me. I enjoyed talking with both of you.
No, it was honestly a pleasure. And, you know, maybe we can talk again in the future. We'll see. But you just keep doing what you're doing. And inshallah, you know, everything goes well for you.
Thank you so much.
And with that, we are going to take a very quick break. And with that, I think that ended our conversation with Dr. Laila. And honestly, I loved speaking to her about how she approached photography, the way that she kind of loves to capture the light, the moment, and kind of just pick up on things people might overlook in their everyday lives.
It was, and I do love how she emphasized the idea that, you know, she didn't find the balance between them, or to have the time for both of them, but they kind of interlapped within each other. And she said somehow she managed, right? Somehow within the time of her days, when she was out, when she was traveling, she found the time to take a photo and then to process that photo. So I think the message there is to find what you really like and just find a way to adapt it into your lifestyle, right? Find a way to merge it into your life.
Yeah, she mentioned being a curious person, and she loved studying to be a doctor. She didn't find it too challenging because of her curiosity for things, and that also bled into photography. She didn't choose to become a photographer, it kind of found her. And I think a lot of people could kind of learn from just kind of following your inspirations and your passions that way.
They could, and I hope they find the message of this episode is to follow their inspiration, find what works for you and chase it, but as long as you keep your career path, you know, intact. With that being said, that's it from us, the team of the Untold. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye, and see you next time.